Good day for everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. And it's my pleasure to be with you for this sharing. My presentation today will, as I've been discussed and requested to share on the environment and sustainability. And my presentation will be in the context of the COVID-19, as we know that currently the world is facing this pandemic. And so within the context again of this conference, where it is focusing on food and where we focusing on the SDG of zero hunger, but I'll be a bit more on the context of environment and sustainability in the era of the pandemic. So we know that, and maybe Dr. Ziad touched a little bit on some of the aspects that we are currently facing a lot of global environmental threats and challenges. And, like climate change, biodiversity loss, and water pollution, water crisis and conflicts, natural resources drain, deforestation impact, and soil degradation. And this is just a kind of an update on the fatalities of the COVID-19 worldwide. We are talking about more than 72 million coronavirus cases. We are talking more than 1.6 million people already died, and more than 50 million people recovered. Talking about the pandemic as a disaster, as a catastrophe. So looking back at the history, from 1900 to 2018 of the natural disasters, which including flooding, landslide, extreme temperatures, and volcanic. So you see here in the graph the number of fatalities over the time, and you see like here the maximum in 1930, which is more than 3.5 million. So just to reflect some numbers, if we talk about COVID-19, now talking about the natural disasters, and now we just, I'll just present one of the few figures from the World Health Organization about one of the disasters, which is continuous. Annually, we are losing 7 million people because of air pollution. And this is splitting over the regions, over 2 million in Southeast Asia, 2 million in Western Pacific, 1 million in Africa region, 500,000 in the Eastern Mediterranean, and 500,000 in the European region, more than 300,000 in the Americas. And this is one more disaster which we are facing annually. This is just maybe a good example of the correlation between the environmental pollution let's start from the beginning. The utilization of solid in which cause the indoor air pollution, right, and also outdoor when we talk about the this type of fuel, which produce a lot of pollutants in the atmosphere. So you can see here, this is the map of India, right, and this is showing here the proportion of the population using the solid fuels, right, and you see here the dark colors. And the second map here over here is the population weighted, the PM 2.5 concentration in those regions, right? And then you correlate it with the number of deaths in those states. So you see the correlation between the usage of the solid fuels and the increase of the air pollutants, the particulate matters, and then the number of deaths. And this is a good example from India to show the correlation between those sources of pollution and the consequence. We are talking about, as I mentioned, of 7 million people dying because of different disease. Mostly it's the respiratory and the heart disease. And out of those 7 million, we're talking about 3.8 million dying because of the household air pollution, right? And again, most of those who are affected, the women and children, are staying at the indoor environment. And you can see here again from different countries, the percentage of people who are exposed to this type of pollution, like in India, 43% of the population, which is more than 700 million people. Talking about China, 30% of the population. Talking about Philippines, 57% of the population are exposed to this type of indoor pollution, and that causes a lot of fatalities and losses. Again, to the disastrous impacts from 2000 to 2012, we're talking about 1.7 trillion damage, and we're talking about 2.9 billion affected, 1.2 million people died. This is an interesting figure as well. We are talking about the cost of environmental damage, the environmental degradation, and it is as a percent of the GDP, right? So you see the highest here in Ghana, which is 9.6% of the GDP. We're talking about Egypt, 4.8% of the GDP. Talking about Nigeria, 7.7% of the GDP. Nepal, 3.5% of the GDP, while the lowest here in Tunisia, which is 2.1% of the GDP, which is a lot of economical loss. This is some figures related to the health cost of air pollution, where they are talking about a projection of $176 billion losses in 2060, where the number was 21 billion in 2015. And again, by 2060, the annual number of lost working days, which affect the labor productivity, is projected to reach 3.7 billion, which is currently, or in 2015, we're talking about 1.2 billion working days. So we are talking about the market impact of outdoor air pollution, which include impacts on labor productivity, health expenditure, and agricultural crop yields are projected to lead to global economic cost, which is assumed or expected to be 1% of the global GDP. So it's a great health and economical losses. So this is the annual cost of environmental damage, and this is in India in billion rupees. So the highest cost because of outdoor air pollution, then indoor air pollution, crop lands degradation, and the water supply issues, forest degradation. So we are here, you can see again the impacts, the economic impacts of air pollution at the country levels. And this is again as a percent of the GDP. So talking about China, it's the effect is 6.6% of the GDP. You're talking about the United States, 3% of the GDP. The lowest is in Brazil, 0.8% of the GDP. And this is because of air pollution. So this is also, again, more interesting figures on the impacts of the health and economy of air pollution. And this is from 2018. So the air pollution costs $3.9 trillion a year, and cause more than 4.5 million premature death. And let's see two quite extreme examples, like the one in China. We are talking about $900 billion as loss and 1.8 million people dying, while in India, we are talking about $150 billion as the loss and 1 million people being dying every year because of air pollution. So maybe here, just to see another example, like in Italy, we're talking about $61 billion loss and 56,000 people dying because of air pollution. Again, it's a huge cost in terms of the economy and in terms of the health impacts. So you have more numbers here on the impacts from the air pollution, and this is related more to the road traffic, road transport. 3.5 million people killed yearly because of outdoor air pollution. 50% of the death is because of road transport. We are talking about $1.6 trillion losses a year. So again, reflecting the current scenario, the environmental challenges with the coronavirus, we've seen a lot of improvement during the coronavirus because of the lockdown in many countries. We've seen a lot of improvement in air quality, water quality, all these issues. Maybe one of the aspects that we face some challenges is the increase of